Hello, and welcome back to the Ask the Color Expert podcast. Today we have a wonderful return guest, Stacey Prescott. She is a hairstylist from Georgia. She empowers stylists to build successful, flourishing businesses based on the art of natural curls. She was recently certified in curl level 1, 2, and 3 with WeDod, and she is a brand champion. And she is also a member of my Hair Color Secrets Insiders. That's how we connected. Her passion for curls is such an asset to our group. She chimes in and answers questions, with any of the members that are dealing with curly hair. And one of the topics that came up recently in our group was Stacey was able to just look at the photograph of the question of the client that was coming in to see someone and said, this client really needs detoxing in her hair. And of course, all the questions come up. Oh my gosh, what is that? What's detoxing? I don't know what that is. So, Stacey, I would love, welcome, by the way, welcome back. But
Hey.
I would love for you to, you know, tell us all about detoxing curly hair and why it's so important.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for having me back. I'm so excited. So, when we think about hair just in general, you know, stuff gets in it, stuff builds up. You have sweat, you have your natural oils, you have products, and curly hair is naturally drier, so the products are going to be heavier. Even as tighter a curl pattern you get, the heavier products, those will build up. Um, your water, whether you have well water or city water, or you have a filter, something is building up. If you live in a place like Georgia, Georgia will pollen on your hair. It just the environment around you, you're pumping gas, the fumes, it all builds up. So we need to periodically be going in and removing that. Your the strength of your hair, the type of your hair, all of that kind of plays into how and when and how often you should be removing that. But the way that we do that is to detox the hair. And when we're talking about detox, it could be something as simple as a good clarifier that which is going to take or a chelator, which is going to take the stuff off of the hair, or even get down to a good scalp detox, which is going to take all of that stuff that's built up off the scalp and the hair and just open it up to make it receptive to the products that you're using so that they will be more effective. You will need less of them. You just can rehydrate, you can get that style you're looking for, so it's really a good thing to have and to do. Um, when we talk about buildup on the hair, there's so many things that it does or kind of makes worse. In curly hair, the reason that I really focused on making sure that there's no buildup on the hair is that it's naturally drier. And that's because for several reasons, our natural oils that hydrate the hair don't get down into the hair. So even when you wear your hair straight, if it's the foundation of it is curly, the makeup is of it is curly, you still deal with dryness in the hair, which can cause frizz. It can cause the curl to be more elongated when you do wear it curly. It can cause breakage. It can cause split ends. It can cause your hair to tangle very easily, all of that. And so when you have the dryness in the hair and then you have buildup on top of it, nothing you're doing to hydrate your hair is getting into the hair. So it's almost like you have a gaping wound that you've put a band-aid over and just called it a day, you know. So removing that detoxing the hair, removing that buildup allows your products to access the hair. If you're just wanting to do a quick detox on just the hair, say you have someone that walked in and they need a color and you're like, okay, I really need to get this off of your hair before I can do that, then you can look at a clarifier. You can look at like I really like the Get Pure from Ken is my favorite. I've also used Undo Goo from Malibu Sea. Those are going to be my top two, but they're really intensive and not something you want to do on the regular for curly hair because in its healthiest state, it's already more fragile than straight hair. But that will get in there, that will remove all of that stuff and just give you a clean palette to work with. You could use a chelator. Like, I really am a big fan of the K18 chelator. You spray it in for 4 minutes and then you go to town, and all it removes 7 of the most common mineral buildups in the hair. So again, a clean palette, but none of that is going to affect any of the buildup that's sitting on the scalp.
I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking, my gosh, I haven't had a scalp treatment since beauty school. Do you remember in beauty school, you had to take turns doing each other's hair with a rose of
Mhm.
the old school bristle brush? That was like
Mhm.
my favorite, we called it self-improvement day. That was my favorite thing because it felt so amazing. But it's something that you don't ever think about in real life. Like
Mhm.
I think if I went to dinner with 5 girlfriends tonight and said, have you ever exfoliated your scalp or done anything for your scalp? I think the answer would be 100% no. So
Mhm.
it's really making me realize, I've had some weirdness with my hair with menopause, and I'm like, well, this totally makes sense. Like, there's probably so much crap on my scalp from years of all the things that I put on here that the hair is not able to push through the way that it normally would. So I'm learning a lot today.
Right, right, and that is a great segue into why you might want to actually do a further detox and get that scalp too. Now, I'm going to reach right over here and I'm going to show you, for anybody that's watching on YouTube. Um, this tool right here is the best
Oh,
thing
is it the
that you
Malibu?
could.
I have a million questions. You have to share this with me because I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but I was at an event. It was a Japanese brand, and they had a scalp, you know, same thing. Scalp.
Uh-huh.
Why can I think of the word?
The
Magnifier?
scope, the scope.
Scope. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a scope to show the sludge on the scalp.
Mhm.
And of course, the model always came in with, you know, pretty dirty hair, like from
Yeah.
life, not disgusting, but dirty, not freshly washed. And they showed it, and it looked like, Crisco oil, like totally packed around the hair. It looked
Mhm.
totally disgusting. And you're like, oh my gosh. And then, of course, they did their thing. And afterwards, it was perfectly clean
Mhm.
and all the things. And I was so hopped up. I'm like, I'm buying this system. I'm buying every product. I'm buying all the things. I fell for everything hook, line, and sinker. And then someone said to me, that's dirty hair always looks like that. It's the difference between dirty hair and clean hair. So, does it really make a big giant difference, or is it a little bit of hocus pocus?
It's okay. So at a hair show, you're going to bring in the worst case scenario so you can make the biggest difference, which is then going to be like, oh my gosh, I need this in my salon. Um, but not everybody has the amount of buildup that that person does. So there may be someone that comes in with a small amount of buildup that does need a detox, but not to the degree that person did. And it's not going to make the big ooh difference, you know? So yes, it does make a huge difference in the people that need a huge difference. And it makes it keeps the hair, if you're not at a place that you need that, it does keep the hair open and receptive because you're already at a good place. It just keeps you at a good place. Does
Got
that
it.
make sense?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
yeah, what you should see. So I don't know that anybody on the podcast heard what this was. This is the Malibu Sea Headlab Scope. But what that does is you look at the scalp and you can see how much buildup. You can't tell what it is. That would be something that you'd have to be a chemist for, but you can see the amount of buildup. What you should see on a very healthy, clean environment is a light film of protective, layer right there, but you should clearly see the scalp through that. What you generally see in someone that's not been detoxing is a very thick layer of whiteness. You might see flakes. You might see buildup around the hair follicle, like you can see mounds around the hair follicle. You might see it coming up the hair shaft. And then, especially in curly hair, because of the types of products we use, you're gonna see heavy coatings along the hair shaft. You're gonna see it like this, just shiny, and you can tell it's just stuff on the hair that needs to come off. Um,
Now, are you
so
able to show the client? Like, does it come up on a screen where you can show
yeah,
them? Or is
Yes,
it there an app on your
you have
phone?
an app on your phone or
Got
your
it.
or your tablet, and you let them hold that. Then you stick this along the hair, and I mean, as soon as you do this, they're like, "Can I have the service now, please?"
Now, don't make me
Because they're
wait.
like, I thought I was clean. Now you have to reassure them it's not a dirty. You are not dirty. It's just life has built up and you have to clean it off. I always use the analogy of a kitchen. It seems to everybody can relate to that. So you go in at night, you clean the dishes, you clean the counter, and you're good to go. It's clean. But then once a month, you're kind of side eyeing that microwave and the big things on the counter, and you move those around and clean. That would be too much to do every day. And it doesn't need to be done every day, but it doesn't mean you're not clean. And then every 6 months, you're like, "Hey, honey." And he comes or she comes and moves the stove and the refrigerator. And you really clean because, like in Georgia and I'm sure Florida and other places, if you don't do that, you're going to have friends. But that is an intense level of clean that doesn't need to be done every day. And it's kind of like that with our detox. So you have your maintenance routine at the house. You have your every wash day, and depending on several factors to determine what that is. Um, Generally with curls, you're going to be somewhere in the 3 to 7 day range. Um, then you have once a month, you're going to replace that gentle cleaning with a little bit more intense. I like to use the Waterworks from Weedod, which is it's a clarifier, but it's for curls. So it's not going to be like Head and Shoulders or something really intense like the Get Pure. And because that does have sulfates, it's a little bit more intense. I always pair that with a very deep conditioning treatment they can do at the house. Um, and then in the salon, they come in for the deep detox, which gets everything off their scalp and their hair, and it just opens it up for the products to hydrate their hair and keep it healthy and to really do what they were created to do. So you kind of get them on that cycle. Different hair types may be able to withstand a detox more often, and different lifestyles may require a detox more often, but on the whole, especially with curly hair, you don't want to be as intense very often. So I have my clients, they'll come in every 6 months and get a detox, but I also pair it with you can kind of see that thing back there for people on the video. That is a steam treatment. It's got the ozone treatment, the steam treatment, and light therapy all built into that. So they go under that for as intense a hydration treatment to counteract the intensity of what I just did to take everything off of their hair.
I love
Um,
that. We have to talk about that because we have a girl in our salon that specializes in curly hair, and she just asked for a new hood dryer. And I said to my husband, "Don't rush to get the hood dryer because there's probably been so many new things now that curly hair is a specialty. We don't have a steamer like that, so we need to talk
mhm.
after the podcast about
Yeah, definitely. And
that.
I'm
You're
gonna
making
tell
me
you,
want to do like I want to embrace my curl in the summer because, as you know, Florida is so humid. I,
yes.
do my hair, my usual hair, and as soon as I walk outside, I'm like, "Why did I even bother?" All the little fuzzies and, the frizz and all of that, but I would need to definitely care for my hair completely differently because seeing my daughter being a curly girl and seeing the difference that a really good
Yes.
curly dedicated product makes in her hair. She looks like a completely different person when she
Yes.
travels and uses someone else's products, it's like night and day.
With curls, quality of product matters. It just does. But if you keep your hair healthy and detoxed, the expensive quality stuff will last longer. So it kind of evens out. I mean, if you think about, I bought a $5 bottle of drugstore shampoo, and then again in a month, I buy another one and another one. Or I buy a $20 bottle of Weedod shampoo and it lasts me 5 months. Who came out on top? You know? um but yeah, it just does all the good things. And talking about when we would do a deep detox, if you think about your scalp, so all that has built up on your scalp as well, and we have our natural oils, and even curly hair we can get it as far as our scalp. But there's this thing, and we all know from biology class, and then we try to push it out of our brain because it's like, "Ugh," but we're covered in things we can't see.
Mm,
And this one that lives on our scalp loves our natural oils, and it eats it and secretes an oleic acid, which makes your scalp itchy. And you're like this and you're scratching, and you might be messing with that buildup and getting flakes and think, oh, I have dandruff. So you try to use dandruff shampoo that doesn't work when it's
mm.
not dandruff, it's buildup. Now, if you think you have dandruff, you may need to see a doctor. There are types that need medication. So, we're not doctors. We can't say yes or no, but I can generally alleviate the problem with a detox. It goes away. Um, but we have that we're kind of scratching and making flakes, but also our scalp is like, ew, I don't like that, let me get it off of me, which kind of gets flaky. And then sometimes it even goes as far as, now I'm flaky, I must be dry, let me make more oil. And so then that thing is like, yes, bring it on, let me eat some more. And and then if you're trapped under all that buildup, it's just propagating it just is cyclical,
Perfect
you know
storm. Yeah.
so getting
I think
that
the
off.
hardest thing for us
Yeah.
with our clients was getting them to stop shampooing every day. Whether they are curly girls or any type of texture is like,
Mhm.
"Oh my gosh, you're telling me not to wash my hair every day?" And I would say to them, "I wish that I could get back the time that I spent in my teens and 20s
Right.
needlessly washing my hair to then, well, it was in the 80s. So then I would put so much crap and product in it to make it crunchy again.
Mhm.
When I just cleaned it all off, I'm putting it all back on. It was just completely insane, to the point where I talk about it all the time in my podcast, on my coffee chats, all the places, that the morning of my perm, a Saturday morning perm that I had an appointment at 9 a.m., I would wake up at 7 a.m. and shampoo my hair, curl it, put hairspray on it. Like, I did my hair the morning
To go
of
get
to
it
go get a
done.
perm. And as soon as I walked in the door, she took me over to the sink and shampooed my hair. And I'm like, why did I think? You're young? So I probably was like, oh, I don't want my hair to
Mhm.
smell. I went out last night. It smells like garlic from the Italian restaurant or whatever it was. But I'm like, what an idiot. Why did I feel like I had to wash my hair to go to the salon?
Hey, we do that. If you have someone clean your house, don't you kind of tidy it up before they come?
Yeah, that's
Why?
true.
You're paying
Yeah,
someone to do that. We do that. We just do that because we don't want people to think we're gross. So like you said, reassure your client it's not dirt. It's not, or well, it's dirt, but it's not you being dirty, it's you being alive. If you didn't have buildup, you'd be dead, and that's not the alternative we want. You know.
right.
But
Absolutely.
another
Speaking of
thing,
dead, this morning I was talking about, I don't know if you saw the coffee chat this morning, but I was
not
talking
yet.
about the letters of hair color and how confusing that it can be.
Oh
That
yes.
a C in hair color is always assumed to be copper. But in several European lines that I've worked with over the years, C stood for cendre, and cendre is ash. So I was on the chat and I said, let me make sure that I'm giving you the right facts. Let me look up the definition of cendre, right? So I type it in and it comes up and it's ash. And then it goes on to say the human remains of someone who is cremated. So I was like, oh God, I was not expecting that to be part of the cendre situation. But,
Right.
to your point, the things that happen, like fine hair, fine thin hair, the Marsha Brady's of the world. I'm dating myself. The parted down the middle, thin, straight hair girl continues to keep overwashing her hair because she's like, but my hair
Mhm.
is so oily. My niece was like that. And I explained to her exactly what you just said. I said, you're shampooing it and you're stimulating your scalp and you're telling it, make more oil. And then
Mhm.
the next day you're doing it again. I said, if you can just make it for 3 days, just once, like just promise me you'll do it 3 days once, you will never wash your hair every day again. I promise you. And now she's
Mhm.
like a totally different person.
Yeah.
But it's convincing them. And I'm sure with curly girls, it's even harder because curly girls get into this mode where they've kind of figured out some things to help them with their curls that no one ever really taught them. It's kind of like something they discovered on their own. Don't you find that it's harder with a curly girl to get them to shift any behaviors because they only wear their hair a certain way?
It's harder to get them to do it if you're telling them, but if you're showing them, it's a
I love
whole
that.
different story, which is why this scope, you're not saying you have buildup, you're showing. Showing is the best thing you can do ever if you want to, convince somebody that this is what they need. Because they don't have to take your word. They're not, oh yeah, she just wants my money. They can see that you are telling them this is what it is. If you want to sell a product, show them how to use it, because then they've had their hands in it and they've seen it work, instead of you saying this product's awesome and it says it does this, so try this. Showing is a whole different beast than telling. And it's another level of connection that they have. And speaking of, if they're washing their hair every day because it's oily, or does it just look oily? What does buildup look like? And if they're seeing that here and you do a detox and all of a sudden their hair can breathe again, and it hasn't been able to breathe in years sometimes, it feels softer, it looks lighter, um it just changes everything. You do also, because when I said looks lighter, if you are using clarifying products, it will change artificial color. It does affect artificial color. So you want to make sure they know that before. It also clarifies the scalp to a point. You want to wait at least 24 hours before a chemical service so that the scalp can build up a protective layer again. You never want to go in and put something like bleach on freshly detoxed scalp. That's not a good idea.
Mm.
Um,
So
you
what does
know,
that look like in your salon? You're solo, so you have
Mhm.
you don't have an assistant that you can push things off on. So if a client is a new curly girl, when she comes in, it say she was down for a gray root retouch, and she comes in, and like the example in the membership where you were like, I can tell by looking at this hair that a detox is more
Mhm.
important. Do you have that conversation with your client and then say, look, I know you came here looking for gray coverage, but it's more important that we do this now? Or do you have a system in place where you're doing a virtual consultation ahead of time, and you know ahead of time to book it that way? What does that look like?
I actually do in person for color, because I'm a one person. It's a big suite, but it's still a one person suite. I can't carry copious amounts of color. There's nowhere to put it. So they do have to come in for an in person consultation so I can do all the things you need to do, get their natural level, get their history, physically look at their hair and see where it is, because if you do, you can't see all the things you need to see virtually. um you know and I also talk about buildup and say, hey, let's look at this. And we
You can
look
do
at
that
it.
at the consultation. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so I talk about how buildup affects color and why it would be important to not have it during a color. And when, if we do need to do a detox, it needs to be this time versus this time in the color. And I said, before we make any decisions, let's sit down and look at your scalp. And then we can go from there. And then they're part of the decision making process. You have empowered them. You haven't, you don't just say, oh, yeah, you need a balayage. You're like, okay, this is, you have buildup. This is how it would affect it. If we don't do it, I highly recommend that you do it. And then you look at that time, you have all the information you need, their inspiration picture, the process they need to go through, to get that. And then you can say, like, for me, they can do a basic color, which is just the all over one color. They can do advanced color, probably, transformation, which is a little more intense, highlights, low light, stuff like that. Or they can do a premium service, which is the big mama jet. We do teasy and foily and baby, and everything is strategically placed different on the head to really get that full transformation. And I have a chance to explain to them in the consultation why that's the better option. you know the more that knowledge you give your client, the more empowered they are. But learning to give it to them in a way that is not like, hydrogen disulfide, this, that, and their eyes start crossing.
Big
You know,
glaze over, yeah.
yeah, learning to tell them about the kitchen. They understand a kitchen. relating to that, also making sure that you're always putting them in a place of power. I recently saw a guy do a I was down at Instagram scroll hole, and he was like, I saw this
Oh, I
stylist.
like that.
He was like, he played a stylist who was talking about, may I touch your hair? And he's like, why would you ever need to ask somebody, may you touch? They're coming to a stylist, they know they're going to get their hair touched. And I'm like, here's an alternate perspective. If you've been abused, if you have sensation issues, if you have PTSD, if you have autism, or if you're neurospicy in any way, you are aware you're going to get touched to get your hair done, but you're not sure when it's coming. And that's very
Mm,
anxiety causing. So if you say, may I touch your hair? Or this, I'm going to touch your hair. It lets them know that now is the time and they are prepared to be touched instead of just boop and they're like, but I like to say, may I, because instead of me telling them I am about to enter their personal space, I am just giving the power to them to allow me into that space. It's takes 2 seconds, and it's a compassionate thing that can change their entire day. Some of these people don't go to hair salons because they can't stand the sun and touch. They're not
mhm.
ready for it. It's just an empowering way to give that honor and respect back to them, you
I
know.
love that. That's awesome. Now, the
Mhm.
people that are listening, I'm in their head right now because I'm thinking it. And they're going to want to say, what does that look like on your menu? What is the pricing? What does that look like? Do you find that most people are receptive to when you put that scope on there? You said most of them are like, can I do that right now? What does that look like price wise to do the detox?
Okay, so when you are pricing a service, there are a ton of things to take into account. You can't look on your menu and see who down the road is doing what, because they probably did the same thing. You have to take into account your education and skill level. You have to take into account what type of products you're using. Are you using Suave or are you using Get Pure? You have to take into account the gross income of the economy that you live in. What I can charge in Valdosta is not what I would charge in Atlanta. It would be significantly more expensive in Atlanta. You have to take into account all of those factors when you're pricing. So it's hard to say, I charge this, so you charge this. But with all of that in mind for Valdosta, Georgia, the first time you come in for a detox, it's $85 unless you get the Uveni upgrade, and then it's 25 more dollars. Um, and I know you've talked about Uveni, so we won't go too much into that, but that is a much, because it's a starting point, it's usually more an intensive one, so it's more involved. But when they come back in 6 months, there are parts that can be reduced to much shorter service times. So that goes down to $65, and then again, if you get the Uveni, it's 25 more dollars. So if you've priced, what sells a price to a client makes them not question it is you not questioning it. If you are confident in your
Confident
price
delivery.
and
Yeah.
you say, I know that I priced it correctly and this is what I'm going to do it for, you say, okay, so this is the detox, this is why you need it. They already know they need it. And then you're like, this is the price is $85. Can we get you scheduled? You have empowered them then at that point to know that they have to have it. They really need it. They really want it at this point. But then you're like, the price is $85. Not, well, it's kind of like $85, but only because this. Don't
Mhm.
question
Don't
yourself
defend
in
it.
front of a
Yeah.
client. Just say your first one's $85. It's a little bit more intensive than the following ones, but we can talk about that. Let's get you booked. Your confidence instills their confidence.
And do you mostly book it as a separate service, or if they just need a cut, do you combine the two together?
It
Because it sounds like it's a time-consuming thing.
The first one is generally a time consuming thing. It can take me up to 2.5 hours depending on the
Oh,
hair
okay.
type. Now, I cut almost 100% of the time. Never say never, never with curls ever say anything is 100% of the time. But almost 100% of the time, I cut curls in their dry form, and they need to be as close to what they would wear their curl like. So with build up elongating the curl, and it's more dry, and it is not, they can't get it in how it should look for a good curly cut. So I like to do a detox, and through that I coach them, and I finish it with a diffused curly style. So I coach them through the whole thing so that they then can go home, if their hair is healthy enough at that point. um, they can go home, and then the next time they come in we can do a cut. If they want to do it back to back, they can. That's a huge long service. It's pretty expensive to do it all in one setting, because on my first cuts I always have to wash and style to check the cut and everything until I've learned their curls. So I generally do it as separate services. They come in for the detox, they get the coaching, then they come back in with their hair dry in the natural curl. Sometimes we have to get a little time in there so that they can hydrate their hair. Hydration is not a one and done thing. It's, you can't get lost in the desert and a bottle of smart water is going to fix it. That doesn't happen. It's a process. There are things that can speed it up, there are things that will slow it down. But sometimes we need to go through that process, then go back and address that. So we might just trim a little bit, not do an actual curly cut, just open up the hair, oxygenate the hair, get the dead ends off, hydrate the hair. The curl will be much healthier. It will hang in the tightness that it should for what it's meant to do. And you can get a much better cut, which is going to make a much happier client. So you can do it as one, but I generally for curly hair don't.
The curly hair specialty in what I've seen from friends who've done it, and we, like I said, we have the stylist who does it at our salon, is to me the fastest growing segment in our industry and the best way to stand out from your competition. I can't tell you how many people I've recommended that they do that, if they, especially if they have curly hair. I'm like, do something different that makes you stand out. If you are working in a salon, I was just watching an interview with a salon that has 50 chairs. How do you stand out in a salon with 50 chairs? You have to pick something that you do. Like for you, not only are you standing out with the scalp treatment, the detox, and the curly specialty, but you also are an educator with a passion for teaching your client how to replicate what you're doing at home. So you've got four different things that you're standing out and being different in. And that's why you're busy all the time and you're constantly getting new clients in. I
Mhm.
get so frustrated when I talk to people and they're like, but I want to do everything. And I'm like, I get it, but there's always something that you're better at, something that you stand out and are unique with that can really propel you into a whole other level where you don't have to do the things that you don't want to do anymore. You
Yeah.
can do what you love doing. So I love that you're doing that. And I can imagine that your clientele, I mean, what would you say the percentage is now of curly versus any other
Oh, it's
texture hair?
it's probably, if it's not 90%, it's 85% curly.
It's
Um,
amazing.
but
And people
when
will
you
come
think
from
about,
far. Do you notice that with
yes.
your, like we see with this
Oh,
girl that does it at the salon, they come from other states.
I have a client that lives in Milan. I have a client that lives in London. I have client across the United States. So yeah, I have a client that lives in Germany, but that's my heart, Germany. I love Ich liebe Deutschland. Um, but another thing that you need to realize is you specialization doesn't preclude other hair types. It doesn't
Right.
preclude you from doing other things. It just gives you, like you say, that sets you apart. And your curly hair clients are going to tell their straight hair friends, and they're going to say, she didn't just tell
100%.
me, she educated me and empowered me, and they want that too. And straight hair people need detoxes. Just saying.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I love that. I love everything that you're doing. I love that you're sharing your passion for curly hair and you're educating other people. And I would love, we're kind of out of time for today, but I would love to do a part two and talk
Yes.
about all the hair color things that are a bit different with curly hair, because I think most stylists, especially generalists, like we were just referring to, when they have all types of hair in their chair, they are treating, just out of lack of knowing any different, they're treating coily, thick, coarse hair the same as someone with super fine, no texture hair, and you're going to run into some trouble if you do that. So I would love to have you share your wisdom on curly for all things color in another episode if you're up for it. I would love that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always up to talk.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. And tell people that are listening now how they can find you, Stacey, and get more of you and your education and all the things you have going on.
Yeah, definitely. You can find me on Instagram. That's probably where I'm mostly at. You can find me on Instagram at Beautifully You Salon LLC. You can find me on Facebook at Stacey Prescott or Stacey Solon Prescott or Beautiful You Salon. And then my website again, www.beautifullyousalon.com. Or you can come visit me in
Awesome.
Valdosta, Georgia.
Your suite is beautiful. I love it.
Oh, thank
Well, thank you
you.
so much. Thanks for being here. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we will see you on the next one.
Bye.